Hi, I'm Mike DelRose Jr. My colleague Bobby McShane. We're with the DelRose McShane team of Coldwell Banker Realty. Bobby, how you doing today?
Not bad, not bad. Yourself?
Doing great. Today's content, home inspections, but what's reasonable to ask after a home inspection of the seller?
Yeah, it's a good topic. I think now, in particular, with the new home inspection laws, expectations going into home inspections, and then just the sheer number of transactions with home inspections, it's definitely been, a transition in that regard.
And in this video, I want to talk specifically about the reasonable offers after home inspection. And let's say, there's an issue and you as a buyer want to be made whole, you want to make a request of that seller. What is deemed as reasonable and what is not? And I think there's a couple qualifying questions, and I think the problem is every situation is going to be different.
Right.
But there's certain guidelines I like to look at with my buyers when asking for anything. I know that if I ask for too much, it's not just a back and forth negotiation. People start digging their heels in, and then you don't get anything. And then they say, we'll move on to the next offer, or we, cut you loose. And there's certainly strong negotiations like that. And some people are adamant about what they're willing to give or what they really want. I always try to find the happy medium that's going to get my clients what they need, what they want, and not lose the seller in that transaction. So I start off by asking, is this an immediate safety issue?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, so radon gas, leaking oil tanks, um, pests. If there's like a bunch of rats on the property and provides a health concern, mold, anything like that, I would deem to be a safety issue. Also, heating systems that aren't vented properly, you're pouring gas into your living area. So carbon monoxide concerns, environmental concerns. So I think any type of safety issue is a reasonable request. It doesn't mean the seller has to grant it. The house might be sold as is, but I'm definitely asking for anything. And I think a lot of listing agents are receptive to that, especially if radon comes in very high, second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States, or mold. Obviously, they're going to have to disclose that if you back out of the transaction. So safety issues, that's probably my first priority.
Yeah, I think the biggest question to ask too, a lot of times people will want to renegotiate on the home inspection and ask for things like, the heating system's much older, or the roof's much older. But if that is information that we knew prior to going into the offer, it's really not much leverage to stand on there. It's really designed for things that were unknown to the buyer, that came up due to the home inspection. So I know that sometimes has been kind of a sticking point for some buyers.
Absolutely. And to your point, stuff we knew about in advance. So your home inspector is going to cover things you need to address immediately, things you address in the midterm, and things you should be paying attention to in the long term. And just because they find something like an aging heating system at the property, say it's deemed at the end of its useful life, it's over 30 years old, it still may work fine. If it works fine, I don't think there's a lot of recourse to get money for a new heating system. I feel like people want to be made whole in that regard in some cases, and I don't find that very realistic, and it ends up hurting you in the negotiation. If it's the condition of it is fine and it's working properly, as long as it is efficient enough to heat the house, the seller's likely going to push back on that.
Yeah. And I think too, you run into some issues sometimes when buyers may throw out just random numbers for things based on the home inspection. And a lot of times there has to be a basis for that. And I think, you know, coming to terms with both the seller and the buyer to have a basis maybe requires you to bring in, say, an HVAC contractor or someone else to look into further, to get those actual numbers as to what would cost, as opposed to just something that someone Googled, for example.
Yeah, I just ran into that the other week. I sold a nice single family out in Metro West, and the inspector took one look at the sewer stacks and realized the pipes coming off it were pitched backwards. you know
Yeah.
so we're talking just gravity to get sewage out of your house, and the pipes were actually pitched backwards, so the sewage couldn't travel down the pipes properly. You saw the rust under those locations because those pipes start rotting from the inside out.
Hmm.
And you better believe we brought in two plumbers to get quotes and made a reasonable request of the seller. So in that type of situation where you have one of those major components of the house not working, make sure you get the time you need to get quotes from licensed and bonded professionals.
Yep.
So I actually just dealt with this out in Framingham. The home inspector, we start on the exterior and then work our way into the basement. And there was a shed on the property. The MLS listing advertised the shed. And he says, this is just like any other shed sitting in your backyard that's made out of wood. It's rotting at the bottom. There's definitely an animal living underneath it, and it's food for wood-eating insects. And during this particular negotiation, the buyer was very concerned about that. And how we dealt with the issue was that there was a lot more important safety issues that were involved with the house that we wanted to get addressed. And while we would have liked money off for the shed, the fact of the matter is any wood shed is going to depreciate pretty quickly if it's untreated outside. So we moved the conversation into more things that the seller would have to disclose otherwise if we left the transaction. They'd be putting the money in to fix the projects we pointed out anyways. And that was the same house as the sewer system with pitched pipes backwards. So I think prioritizing major components and things that are going to cost you more money long term are more important than everything the home inspector points out, because every home inspection report is going to have this major list of things. It's going to be very overwhelming. Certain things the seller is going to say, oh man, I need to address that, otherwise if this buyer walks, I'm going to have to do it anyways. It costs less money to keep that buyer in the deal.
Yeah, I think picking your battles like anything, it's, if there's a list of 20 things and, there's things like no door stops noted or a railing needs adjustment or a GFI outlet, those sorts of things versus some of those bigger ticket items, it might make sense strategy wise to maybe attack those couple bigger ticket items and, let let the seller side know there's other items as well, but we're keeping those aside. We want to focus on these here. So
That's actually a tactic that many buyer agents use, and I know you've seen this on the listing side, where hey Mike, this heating system's actually broken, it's not functioning properly. And also, by the way, there's old termite damage, and these, doors are falling off their frames, and paint is peeling in this room. And some of those issues are also legitimate, but they don't really care about, but they want to demonstrate that this issue is really important to them, and they're only asking for that issue, not everything else, in an attempt to seem more reasonable with their requests. So I definitely see that kind of strategy on the other end.
for sure. Yep.
So home inspection reasonableness and negotiation. If you have questions, reach out. I'm Mike DelRose.
Bobby McShane.
Thank you.
Thanks.